Okay, we were talking about Nelson, the character of Nelson. Anything else you want to add about him?
No, really, pretty much stay tuned. Like I said, he's, I think the joke on him was that he actually was the only person that actually was taking all this stuff seriously, and not only the law but the religious aspect of his life. And the more he strays from that stuff, I think the happier he seems to be.
Chalky White.
Chalky White was sort of born of my research and reading about Atlantic City at the time. And Michael Kenneth Williams, another actor I failed to mention earlier, who we were just so blessed to have as part of our cast. Chalky, we knew we would have to have a character who represented the African American community in Atlantic City. The African American community there was hugely important to the infrastructure of the city and also politically. The political wisdom of the day was that if you controlled Atlantic County politically, you controlled New Jersey, and if you controlled New Jersey, you controlled a huge part of the voting population. So the African American population made up a big part of the city. They were largely the people who built the hotels, who worked in the hotels, waiters, busboys, people who pushed the rolling chairs. So Nucky knew that to keep his power, he needed to keep that segment of the population happy. So I knew there needed to be a Nucky on that side of town. So that Nucky was going to be a guy named Chalky White. Chalky, the name Chalky White was pitched to me by Tim Van Patten. The actual Chalky White was a boxer in the 1930s. We just loved the name. And we thought, all right, maybe that's part of Chalky's backstory. He's a former prize fighter, and comes up from Texas, and he's the guy who runs that side of town. And he is equally powerful as Nucky is in his neck of the woods. So it came time to cast that role. We needed somebody who just exuded this power and elegance, and as a former prize fighter, he needed to feel like a tough guy. And we looked at a bunch of actors, and then Michael. We had been told that Michael Kenneth, who played Omar on The Wire, was not available. It was kind of heartbreaking. And then, sort of almost at the 11th hour, he was available, and we reached out, and he said he wanted to do it, and he was there, and he was in, and he was Chalky, and he only appears very briefly in the pilot, literally in one shot, and then he came back in episode 2 and onto the series, and he's very, very big in season 4. I'm happy to say we finally get a chance to spend a lot of time on the north side in Chalky's neck of the woods. So he's great. Michael is he's so cool. I mean, he's one of these guys who just you walk down the street with him and people love him, and he's just, when I say cool, he's just suave, and he just knows how to be that guy, and it's so funny to watch. It's like he's just so self-possessed and just so always looks great, and he's dapper and just knows exactly the right thing to say to people, and people just love him, and they flip out over his character on The Wire, and Chalky's like one of our big beloved characters.
Yeah, what's Chalky's relationship with Nucky?
I think there's a real respect there. I mean, a part of it is born of it's a mutual respect that they need each other. But I think there is underneath it a real friendship and a real respect. Again, I've used the word respect 10 times, but that's pretty much what keeps popping into my head. They do need each other, and I think whether or not they liked each other or not, they would work together. But I do think they do like each other.
Now, since you're going into you're halfway through production on season 4, from that first day of the pilot, could you have a vision where you are right now?
No, I mean, it's all, in some ways it's gone so fast. I can't believe it. When I look up, in our writers' room, we've got one sheet of paper for each episode we've done that has the various storylines written on it, and sometimes I glance up and there's like this 43 of them up there already, and I said, when did we do this? It's a blur, and then part of me is like, oh yeah, I remember the long days and the dark nights of trying to figure out stories and stuff. But I guess it's like childbirth. People forget how painful it was. They keep having kids. It's like we keep doing it. You forget. You somehow get through a season and you're limping toward the finish line, and you do it all over again. And we'll get through a season, and it's so much work and so many stories and so many hours put into making those 12 episodes. It always reminds me of Thanksgiving dinner. It takes forever to make it, and then it's over in 35 minutes. And it's like this took days of preparation, and that's sort of, for us, it takes months and months and months to distill it down to these 12 hours of material. And then you start again, and you go, oh my God, we can't. How do we do this again? How did we ever do it before? And then somehow it just starts with what if? Okay, well, what if right, we're in 1925, and what if Nucky's here, and what if this person, and then one thing starts building on another, and before you know, you've got all these balls in the air, and it happens again, and then you swear you can't do it again, and yet you do.
What does a typical week in your life look like when you're on a show?
It depends what time of year it is. At the very beginning of the year, it's all just writers, just the writers. Will come in. Usually we've been starting the writers' room in November. We'll come in and it's just 8 or 9 hour days of sitting around the table in the writers' room, talking and plotting out. I'll usually come in with a pretty broad strokes idea, like David did on The Sopranos, of what the season is and where Nucky will end up and where we want to begin and end, and then it's all of that. It's all those telling stories and digressions, and then start to get outlines together, and then once we go into actual production, it's a little more time consuming because I have to now duck out to go to departmental meetings, hair, makeup, stunts, tone meetings, and then once we start getting cuts of the episodes back, then I spend time editing. So my time gets pulled away from the writers' room, and that's where Howard Corder really is taking over. I'm also blessed again by having Tim Van Patten involved. He spends, when he's not directing, he's always on the set, so he handles the vast majority of the producerial aspects of the show. I mean, I'm very rarely on set. So because Tim's there, and we're so in sync creatively that he'll always make the decision I would have made, or if not, a better decision than I would have made. So the fact that I'm not there, I think I can count on one hand for the duration of the series, times when I would see something and go, I might have done that a little differently, but never anything that's so big that I think, I can't believe this happened. So it actually runs pretty smoothly.
What about your working relationship with HBO?
They've been great. I swear to God I'm not saying this because they're paying my salary. They are terrific. They are so supportive of us and have always been supportive of me, and they're supportive in general. You hear everybody, so many showrunners who work for them and people in general who work for the company rave about them all the time, so this is really nothing new. I think they respect their audience, and they hire people who they respect, creative people who they want to work with, and then they get out of your way. They really let you do your job. They don't give you notes per se. We have conversations. We talk about things. They have ideas about scripts. They will always give me an opportunity to explain myself. If they don't understand something, they don't like it, they'll say, well, what is this, and why did you do this? And then I'll explain it to them, and then they'll say, oh, okay, that makes sense, and they'll go. They've never given me a mandate. You have to do this. You can't do that, ever. I mean, the killing of Jimmy Darmody was a great example. I mean, on a network show, I would have called and said I want to kill Jimmy Darmody, and then they would have replaced me as the showrunner. That's probably what would have happened. I would have come back and say, no, we're not killing him. We're killing you. Thank you for your service, and somebody else will be running the show. They really respect my vision as the creator of this show, and they let you do your job. And I cannot say enough about how freeing that is as a writer and an artist.
That's great. A few other questions about the show. The opening sequence.
We wrestled for a long time with what that might be. We had a few different companies come in and give us mock-ups of what it might be, and it all felt too cluttered and a lot of it was just too on the nose 1920s things, and it just felt, we said we want this to be different. We want this to be a different look of the 1920s. We want it to feel very much a period show, but not a period show, with a modern sensibility. And that kept going on and on in my mind, and I wanted to be more metaphorical, whatever it ended up being. And then I'm pretty sure I got the idea. I just kept seeing a wave of bottles washing up onto shore, and then very much, almost surreal. Nucky sort of just there, just on the ocean, and just a couple of bottles, and then more bottles and more bottles until it's just being overrun with bottles, and it looked like that, Magritte painting, and when we got it back, and it was just great. And then in terms of the big challenge was juxtaposing music to that. And Steve Turner, who at the time was our post-production supervisor and now is a writer on the show, had married a lot of music and images for some promos, and one of which was a song called Straight Up and Down by the Bryant Jonestown Massacre. And it's funny, I had seen a documentary about this band called Dig. It was actually about the rivalry between the Bryant Jonestown Massacre and another band called the Dandy Warhols. And I thought it was great. And he had played me this music that was juxtaposed against one of our promo pieces, and I thought it was great. And then he told me what band it was. I went, oh my God, I love that band from that documentary. And when we got the footage back for the opening credits, we just started throwing up different music and everything from ragtime to various 1920s things to Charleston. I think the Leonard Cohen song "Everybody Knows" was in contention for a while. There was another song by White Stripes, "Ball and Biscuit," I think was one of the top three, and then I kept coming back to Bryant Jonestown Massacre, and I just kept feeling it, and I just kept saying, I think this is it, and showed it to Marty. He agreed, HBO agreed, and then, of course, whenever anything is new or different, there's this backlash. What's this? It's 1920s, but it's modern music, and I don't get it. And when I hear that, I know we're right, because people, of course, when it's something different, I've never seen that before. It's like, great, then we're definitely on the right track. So now I think a lot of people have since come around and they get like, well, it should be ragtime 1920s stuff. And it's like, that's exactly what I didn't want to do.
What about your philosophy for music within the show itself?
I didn't want to use score. We didn't use score on Sopranos. It was all source music. I think we've broken that rule a couple of times, a handful of times on the show. Of course, I cannot think of a single instance when, but I'm pretty sure we did. But I wanted it to all be source music, but I realized then in conversations with Marty, there aren't a lot of sources in 1920. There's no car radios. Very rarely people even had a Victrola. Usually it's only live music. So then we realized, well, if we do it like a Scorsese movie, and what better opportunity because we have the actual Scorsese you can just lay over music onto things that aren't, it's not score, but it's period recordings or re-recordings of things that'll just function as score. So that's what we've done there. We're fortunate to have an incredible music supervisor, Randy Poster, who also teamed up with Vince Giordano, who's a legendary local band leader. He has a band called the Nighthawks. Vince, they play every week at the Edison Hotel. They are the orchestra you see at the club on the show, at Babette's on the show. They're the guys in the orchestra pit, and they play period music, and it's great fun. If you get a chance to go over there, they are terrific, and it's all the types of music you hear on the show up until the 30s and 40s, and just a lot of really obscure songs and great stuff. And Vince, has just been a wealth of information about songs of the period. I mean, we have songs on the show. Silent movies used to be accompanied by a piano player, and they would have piano roll of music to accompany a chase scene, for example. They play, oh, that's the chase music. Oh, it's the love scene. It's a different thing. When silent movies went out, all of this music that was written specifically to accompany silent films was just shelved and put away. So there was sheet music that existed for 90 years that had never been recorded, that hadn't been heard for 90 years, that Vince found, and they pull out the sheet music and go, well, play this. What does this sound? And they go, oh, let's record that. So we have music on the show that was actually not been heard for 90 years, that's just sort of lost to time, that Vince Giordano and Randy resurrected. And we put out a soundtrack album that went on to win the Grammy Award in season 1, which I'm enormously proud of, because my knowledge of 1920s music coming into writing this pilot was the Charleston and Rudy Valley yelling through a megaphone. That was all I knew. And then they opened my ears to this stuff. They just started sending me great music to listen to, and I said, God, this was really cool. My grandmother must have been pretty cool. Who knew? This was all this really great music. So yeah, fun.
That leads me to another character, Eddie Cantor.
Eddie Cantor, yeah, Stephen DeRosa. Another huge addition to the show. I love the idea. I knew I wanted to juxtapose the massacre in the woods that Jimmy Doherty and Al Capone were pulling off with some sort of entertainment. And part of my research, I found some footage of Eddie Cantor doing a stand-up routine. And I thought, oh, this is great. So I sort of lifted that stand-up routine and then added more jokes, Eddie Cantor-esque jokes to it. And that was going to be where Nucky was, out with his girlfriend watching Eddie Cantor perform. And that was one of the great things about the real Nucky is, because he ran the city, every performer who came through town would end up glad-handing with Nucky, having dinner with Nucky. He knew everybody. So legitimately, he knew Eddie Cantor. He knew every celebrity, and this is how we could work Jack Dempsey into the show. We could work whoever. If you're a celebrity in Atlantic City in 1920, you met Nucky, no question. So we thought Eddie Cantor definitely is the guy we want. casting that was incredibly difficult. We had, and here's where you have footage of the real Eddie Cantor. So you're asking actors, okay, do that. And one after another, actors just were not getting it. And I remember sitting in watching tapes of actors with Martin Scorsese, and we got just one after another. It was just not even close. And then finally, the name comes up on screen. It says Steven DeRosa. So Marty says, "Oh, great, an Italian guy is going to play Eddie Cantor. Let's see this." And there was Eddie Cantor. It was Steven DeRosa, who nailed it. I mean, to the point where it was eerie how good he was. And he's been such a huge part of the show since, and such a fun character to weave in and out. And he re-records a lot of different songs for us, and then was very big at the end of season 1. He did a version of a song called "Life's a Funny Proposition After All," which became sort of the closing theme of the season. So he's been great, and he's sort of like my good luck charm. I always have him in.
Do you have a favorite episode so far?
I guess I have to say I have several. I mean, I don't think I have one. A lot of them are Howard Corder episodes. Our 11th episode last year, where Nucky is sort of under siege and takes refuge at Chalky's place called Two Imposters, I think is the high watermark for me for the show. Just great, just brilliant. I mean, that's all Howard Corder and Tim Van Patten, just incredible. And that was, Howard Corder and Alan Coulter. The episode when Jimmy gets killed was me and Tim and Howard wrote that together. Was also, I think, some of the best work we've done, and I'm really proud of. But yeah, I mean, it's so fun. I mean, to get to work with Howard. I get to be a fan of my own show because, I mean, he obviously it's a collaboration and we develop the stories together, but he's so in tune with this show that once he writes the episode, I don't touch it. So I get to just watch somebody write my own show completely. And, I mean, if I do anything, it's light editing with his stuff. So I get to be a fan, really, truly a fan, because I don't know what he's going to do. Because I'm not telling him what to do. We'll talk about the story, but then he'll go off and write it. And it's always such a joy to read his work and to see it come to life. And it's always, just breathtaking, the level of detail that he goes into, and he's just written some incredible things.
Do you pay attention to the press the show gets and the reviews?
Yeah, I do initially at the beginning of the year, and just as a function of how'd we do, and but it's weird as the series has gone on, it's not reviewed as much. Initially it was we got 50 different people reviewed it, and then it's like less and less every year, and it doesn't really matter. Truly, it doesn't matter to the ratings. I don't think it makes a difference to the audience or the levels of which people watch the show or not. We seem to have a fan base that's pretty solid, and I think those are the people who watch the show, and that's maybe it dips and ebbs and flows a little bit, but for the most part, I do really try to make a concerted effort to not read the internet stuff. I mean, that's just a black hole of bile. It's just amazing. I mean, you could write a story about a puppy, and there'll just people like, "Fail, hate that puppy." Oh my God, it's just I don't even understand the people who feel the need to just say horrible things about everything. And of course, it's human nature that you're not really looking for compliments for your show. You're looking for people who hate it to sort of bolster the fact that you're really a fraud and your mother was right and you can't do anything right. And that's the thing, is you'll read 100 nice things and then one negative thing. Oh, that guy really gets it. They really understand, and it's just no point in it. It's such a waste of time, a black hole of nothingness that it just doesn't give you anything. So I do try to steer away, and I've gotten a lot better over the last couple of years of just it's a waste of time. It's totally a waste of time.
Do you have an idea of who your fan base is?
I'm always amazed. It really runs the gamut. We have a lot of women who love the show. I mean, I will look at the Twitter feed, when the show, and I am amazed at how many women love the show. Because it's kind of hardcore gangster stuff. I think it's a lot of there's the people who are the fans of the gangster genre. There are it does. I think we have a pretty wide-ranging demographic age-wise. I mean, I think a lot of people. I think the perfect viewer for me is somebody who's interested in history, who at least knows a little about history, or is interested in history, is a fan of the gangster genre, and is also patient enough to watch a story develop and pay attention to that story. So, but it runs. I mean, I hear everything from teenagers to 80-year-olds who love it, and I guess the most surprising thing for me is how many women actually like the show and respond to it.
How much longer do you think Boardwalk Empire will go?
I would like it to go several more seasons. We're in the middle of season 4. I'd like to do at least 6 seasons, preferably 7, maybe, or 8, if there is again an appetite for it from the public and HBO. I mean, I would love to see it through to its proper conclusion. As a piece. It's think of it as like a big epic novel, and I would love to take this through. Certainly the end of the 1920s, or as an exploration of again the Prohibition years. So. Hopefully I'll be able to do that. If I can't do that, I hope I have enough advance notice to wrap the series up properly. And it was sad years ago when Deadwood sort of got the plug pulled on it, and for whatever reasons those were, I really felt gypped. I mean, I invested a lot of time, and not a lot of time, but I watched the show. I wanted to see it brought home properly, and I felt like I didn't have that experience. And if I'm asking you to give me hours of your life, I feel like I owe you the experience of telling a proper story, and to not give you a third act is sort of I'd feel cheated.
Can you tip us off on anything that's going to be happening in season 4?
Season 4, we have moved into 1924. Nucky has made good on his promise to Chalky White to give him a club on the boardwalk, and he has a sort of our version of the Cotton Club on the boardwalk. It's called the Onyx Club. So on the site of the former Babette's nightclub is now this really big, lavish nightclub that features African-American entertainment. Chalky butts heads with Chalky and Nucky butt heads with a gangster, the most powerful man in Harlem, played by Jeffrey Wright. He's Dr. Valentin Narcisse. We continue on the Odyssey with Al Capone in Chicago. 1924 is, of course, the year that he and Dean O'Banion kind of went to war. So there's that going on, and that's pretty much all I'm comfortable saying at this point.
Great. You also mentioned that you're working on some other projects.
Yeah. I have another series in development for HBO. We're hopefully going to shoot the pilot. The plan is to shoot the pilot at the beginning of 2014. It's as yet untitled, set in the world of rock and roll in 1973. It follows a A&R executive named Richie Finestra, who will be played by Bobby Cannavale, who's sort of on a career trajectory, sort of on the white-collar part of the record business, and he goes through a midlife crisis that sort of sends him back into the real A&R world, the club world, and discovering bands. 1973 was the year that disco, hip-hop, and punk all started, all pretty much within a 5-mile radius of where we're sitting. New York City was at a low point economically, and crime was through the roof, and a lot of times out of that turmoil comes great art, and certainly that was true of the music business. So it's a really interesting time period, and Richie's a really interesting character, and Bobby Cannavale is absolutely the guy to play him. I've said kiddingly that I want this show to do for cocaine what Mad Men did for cigarette smoking. Every record executive I talked to said all they did from morning to night was cocaine, and everything was, decisions were influenced and things happened because of cocaine, and that's certainly kind of true. It's kind of a wild ride in the record business, and I think it'll be a really fun show. And of course, Martin Scorsese and Mick Jagger are behind that, and we talked about the surreal experience of me meeting Marty for the first time. Well, you can multiply that by a factor of a couple of hundred when it was me, Marty, and Mick Jagger in the same room. Talk about feeling like, okay, this isn't my life. What am I doing in this room? But they're just incredible collaborators, and just and it's amazing to be working with these guys.
Will be also historically based in the sense that real bands.
Yeah,
like
well,
that.
we interweave real bands in with fictional bands, and sort of how we do it on Boardwalk, where you've got some real people, historical figures interacting with our fictional characters. So it's the same thing. A lot of fun, a lot of great music.
That's great. Anything else in the works?
I have a movie coming out November 15th, as of right now, called The Wolf of Wall Street, starring Leonardo DiCaprio, directed by Martin Scorsese. Actually, the first trailer was just on the internet 2 days ago, which was really exciting to see it starting to come to life. That's really exciting. That's a script I wrote 5 years ago. It's a story of a real guy named Jordan Belfort, who was a stockbroker in the 1990s, who by the age of 26 was making like $50 million a year. He was really big in the penny stock world, and just had this incredible roller coaster ride of a life, filled with drug addiction, sex addiction, money addiction. Ultimately ended up going to jail, sort of coming out the other end of it, and he is now a motivational speaker. So it's a very fun look at Wall Street in the 90s.
What's been the highlight of your career so far?
Highlight of my career, I'm blessed to say I keep having new highlights. Getting a job first of all, getting a job as a writer was, I thought, okay, if I die now, I am a member of the Writers Guild. I mean, writing on The Sopranos, I mean, winning Emmys, getting to work with David Chase, Martin Scorsese, having my own show, having that show, be recognized in the way it is. I just feel like I'm blessed to do this for a living. I really am. It's such a cliche, but I feel like I haven't had a job since 1994. The thing they say, do what you love, and the money will follow, and do what you love, and you'll never work another day in your life. I mean, that is how I feel. I mean, this is what I want to do anyway, regardless of the economic aspects, and it's a job and all that. This is how I want to spend my days. I mean, I feel like I don't work, and a lot of people here will tell you I don't, but I really do. But I am so blessed to be able to do this for a living. It's just beyond comprehension. It sounds so corny. It's all a highlight. It really is.
Any regrets?
I want to say that I regret I didn't do this sooner or have the courage to follow my dream, but all of that was what made me who I am. So life happens for a reason. I'm glad I got to it when I did, but I do often think like, well, wow, if I knew a little about this, and when I was in NYU, if I graduated and came right to Hollywood, how would everything be different? But I'm sure I wouldn't have met David Chase, or I'd gone on The Sopranos, and I wouldn't have had those life experiences that inform everything I do. I mean, so it's all, even the struggling years and the missteps and the things, it's all grist for the mill, and the years as a lawyer and in the law school and the friendships I made there, and it's all part of what I do now. So, no, I guess.
Okay, where do you see yourself 10 years from today?
Nearing retirement, I hope, from the grind of producing a series. I guess I'd like to slow down a little bit. I guess I've taken on a lot more work than I should have over the last couple of years. I've done a bunch of movie work and stuff. So I guess I'd have to see how it feels. 2014 is going to mark the new era where I'm not doing 9 things at once, that I'll only do like 5 things at once, and that might be a lot easier, in which case in 10 years from now I might be perfectly happy still running a TV show. Right now I think, oh my God, I can't keep up this pace, so maybe slowing down a little bit. But I think I will always write, and I think I'll always be in the business in some way, as long as they'll have me. It's just to what extent will be determined by how my hips hold out.
What do you think is the power of television?
It's immediate, it's right there. It's in your home. These are not big, insightful observations, but it's just the immediacy of it is just so unlike anything else. You don't have to go out to a movie theater and sit down and look at a schedule. You just turn it on and it's happening. As a creator, I can drive to work and get an idea, and it'll be on TV, and you'll be watching it in 6 months, which blows my mind. I mean, and I've had that happen a bunch of times where you go, wow. I've been involved with movies that take years to get into development. Nothing ever happens with them. TV, it's like if you have a show that's on the air, you can connect with people almost immediately, and it's incredible, and in some cases live, which is just amazing. TV gets a bad rap, and I always remind people in my family, TV's been very good to us. TV paid for this house. TV will pay for your college. It's not the boogeyman, obviously you shouldn't watch 8 hours of television a day, but I've learned a ton of stuff from television, and it taught me, formed my sense of humor and my ability to tell a story, and I've learned a ton of things from TV. And if it's used wisely, like any other drug, you can actually get something out of it. Maybe it's sort of it's a balance that has to be adhered to. So it's great.
How has the digital technology affected you in your work?
You mean the various platforms to watch things on? I think it's great. I guess it's very different. I don't understand a lot of it. I mean, I'm 52 and I'm sort of like grandpa. I'm literally, my 6-year-old son was showing me how to work his iPad. I couldn't find something, and he found it for me. So I've become that person already. But it's interesting. Obviously when I was a kid, if your ass wasn't in the seat at 9 o'clock when the show was on, you didn't see it. And if they didn't rerun it, you never saw it. So I remember in 1983 or 4 when the VCR happened. I mean, joined a movie, video store and got to watch hundreds of movies that I only heard about until that point, and then just overloaded on that stuff. So now it's like, you can watch something on your phone, your watch, or have it beamed right into your brain. It's good. I mean, from my perspective, would it be great if everybody got to watch my show on a big screen TV with great sound and to really fully appreciate it? Yeah, perfect world, that's what it would be. I'm just glad people have opportunities to catch it. I mean, I fly and watch things on my laptop, on planes, on my iPad, all that stuff. And, the more ability we have to get our work out there, I think the better it is.
Last question is, what advice would you give to an aspiring writer?
Write. Don't quit. It's really hard. I mean, sometimes the hardest thing to do is to come home and press the button on that computer. I mean, sitting and staring at a cursor that's blinking at you on a blank page is really daunting. But no one has ever rang my doorbell and asked to read a script I wrote. You've got to get it out there. You've got to write it. You got to push through it. It's I think a lot of people think they want to be writers, but if you really do want to be a writer, you will write, and you have to do it a lot. And it's like any other craft. I mean, you will get better at it. I read things I wrote 5 years ago, and I think, wow, I would do this differently now. And you do get better at it, and it is a craft like any other. You gotta want it, and you gotta keep working at it.
Great answer. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm sorry, man. I've talked right through your machine.